The Sixers final 25 begins down in South Philly tonight. We're here to talk all about it and what it's going to take to get this Sixers team past the second round. We start in 30 seconds.
Holding, gets around in front. Embiid,
and Philadelphia has it.
And a very good morning, everybody, and welcome to Trending in the AM right here on DSM Media. We're live. Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. You know the drill. Like, share, retweet, and follow on all social media platforms. Do us that favor. Head over to the DSM Media YouTube page. Hit that like and subscribe button. Turn notifications on. It's the best place to drop your comments, thoughts, questions. For today's guest, and whenever you're watching any of the shows, as we talk today, Sixers basketball, I'm joined by a very special guest, Sean Barnard, the founder over at Pick Swap Media, Sixers writer for Philadelphia Sports Network. You know who he is. He's been everywhere, and talking Sixers and covering Sixers on a regular basis. Good morning, Sean. How you doing?
Doing well. It's good to be back on here. Excited for Sixers season to pick back up. It feels like All-Star break. It was nice to get a little reset, but I'm ready for them to dive back in. And yeah, things are good overall, and I'm ready to talk some hoops.
Absolutely. So real quick, before we get started, I do got to give a quick shout out and a quick thing here. Today is my wonderful wife and my dog Penelope's birthday. So I want to wish them both a happy birthday. And Penelope is 12. I won't say how old my wife is on the air, but happy birthday to both of them. And in the bio of the show on Facebook and on YouTube, everybody watching, there's a link. My wife is running a fundraiser for the sanctuary, the rescue that brought us Penelope. They do great work rescuing senior dogs. Noah's Ark, better known as NARPS. So if anybody out there wants to spend their coffee money helping a great cause, a great rescue, that is linked in the bio of this show. I greatly appreciate it. Happy birthday, Melissa. Happy birthday, Penelope. All right. Got the business and the shout out of the way, Sean. How to do that. She hates when I embarrass her on things like that, so got to take care of that there. All right, so Sean, I hate when people call it the second half. I'm calling it the stretch run. Everyone calls after the All-Star break the second half. Dude, there's 25 games left, and it starts tonight in South Philly. It's not the second half. It's the final stretch run for this Sixers team. And there's a lot of tempered expectations. Obviously, Philadelphia has had a great run. The Phillies, the Union, the Eagles, all making these title runs. And this Sixers team is more than capable, in my opinion, of following suit. But because of how many times they've burned us as fans, it's really, really tough for this city to get excited. And before we get into the X's and O's, do you feel that same lack of energy right now coming from the fan base? Because I'm wearing a Union shirt today. I'm not wearing a Sixers shirt today. Like, that does not seem right, but it is where we all are at this point, right?
Yeah, no, it definitely is. It feels like, they've, with all the noise that's gone on across Philly sports, it feels like everyone kind of has these Sixers at an arm's length as far as expectations. And it's absolutely because of the past couple of years. And I mean, this team hasn't been past the second round since Allen Iverson in 2001. And it's been one thing after another with this group of finding a way to stumble and not make it by. But if you do just look at this team objectively and how they've played, they've come into the All-Star break with the best record since that 2001 year. Like, this team objectively has looked pretty good when fully healthy, when fully constructed, and there is reason to believe. But I also understand the kind of pessimism and being not ready to fully buy in yet.
And I don't even think it's like everyone calls us the Negadelphia and all the bad things that happen. I don't even think it's that. I just think it's the simple fact that we have been burned and this team has disappointed so much. So let's get into this team and what it's going to really have to take. They sit in the third spot in the Eastern Conference right now. They've got a super difficult schedule, in my opinion, in these final 25. I know you put something on your Twitter page breaking it all down. A lot of over 500, a lot of playoff quality teams, a lot of road games. And this Sixers team, are they equipped to handle the stretch run? I was looking at it. I think it's 15-10. That puts them at 53 wins to end the season. Is this team capable? Do they need to do better than that? But is this team capable, as constructed, to at least hold water and keep that third spot? Do they need to move up a little further in the standings for your comfort level? Like, what are your realistic expectations in these final 25 games.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a tough task and not ideal to kind of murderer's row of one after another, the teams that they're going to face. But I also do kind of like the aspect of them coming in with the playoff mindset, having the getting as battle tested as possible through this. And it feels like over the past couple of years, we've seen situations where the Sixers have, I don't want to say coasted into the playoffs, but it hasn't been a like foot on the gas as far as the teams they're playing. There's been some over concern with the seeding and taking care of business there. For me, I just want to see the mindset of one game at a time. Let's learn how to win. Let's keep this group together and take that mentality into the playoffs. So I'm not overly concerned with seeding this year. We've kind of done that dance where we're looking at the matchups in the playoffs. We've gotten burned in the year where we got the 1 seed and would have made sure that we got the Hawks in the second round. So we only had to play either the Bucks or the Nets, whoever won that, and then totally folding in the Hawks series, not even getting there. So to me, if they want to be a legitimate contender, it shouldn't matter. They should believe they can beat anyone, and wherever the seeding ends up. I personally think they're going to end up sticking in that 3rd seed, which is just fine with me. I think they're kind of due for a throwdown with the Bucks, and as long as they build off their play, and with this team, it's been mainly themselves that have beat themselves when it's been an issue. So stay focused on themselves, keep building on it, and I'm ready for them to be locked in for the stretch.
You hit on two things there that I've been thinking a lot of lately, and one, you hit on it with the seeding and trying so hard to get the 1 seed to avoid those teams a few years back there, and then obviously we didn't even get to that point. And I keep thinking in my head, I don't want to play the Celtics and the Bucks in the playoffs. I want to get a seed where you can avoid hopefully one of them. But you bring up an excellent point there, where once you get to the playoffs, all the teams are going to be. It's going to be a tough matchup, no matter who we face. And if you're worried about that, then that could distract you in the regular season and get you going in the wrong way into the playoffs. And then you talk about playing good basketball going in, and you look at a few years back when we won 17 games in a row to close the season, and it still had the same disappointing results. So you just want to be playing your best basketball and focused on your team and stuff like that, and not worry about the outside noise really as much.
Yeah, totally. It's the Sixer team has got to be one of those look inside yourself, just focus on you, how you're playing, take it one game at a time, and that's kind of what I expect from them there. They shouldn't be that worried about it. Just get a ticket into the postseason and focus on playing your best ball. Then don't worry about kind of where the chips fall as far as matchups, because they should be locked in and mentally ready to beat and match up with anyone.
Yeah, and obviously, like we said, it's a murderer's road, especially right out of the gate here after having the week off. Memphis tonight, down south, Philly, Boston, and then a couple games against Miami and Dallas and Milwaukee. How important is it for this team's confidence? Because obviously, I've been talking about it on the show all season that January was going to be a very good record-wise, barring any injuries or whatever or craziness, because of the easier part of the schedule. And I said, everybody, the end of the schedule is pretty tough. But record-wise over the final 25, I'm not as concerned about how we perform in these first 3 or 4 games of this stretch, to kind of make like a statement to the league, to make a statement to yourself and your fan base. So how important is it for them to come out right away? And I don't want to say they have to win tonight or against Memphis, but it would make a big statement if they did. And in Boston and all these games right out of the bat, a statement coming out these first 5 games and going 4-1, even 3-2 to an extent, is not, the worst thing in the world. The statements right now need to be made, and then worry about the last 10 or 12 games and, what you have to do then.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it goes across nationally too. Like, I don't think it's just Philadelphia that has the concern of keeping them at arm's length and doesn't fully bought it. I think nationally there's not an entire belief that this team is a contender as constructed. So I think picking up wins against teams like Memphis, like Boston, is a huge opportunity to change that. Tonight, I think specifically a great opportunity to come out rearing. Memphis is obviously a terrific team and a talented team out west, but they've kind of slipped from the way they started the season. They obviously have the All-Star break. They're coming off the reset as well, so who knows how exactly they'll come out. But they're not kind of the daunting matchup that it looked like for most of the season. So I think this is a good chance for the Sixers to get off on the right foot, get a win at home against a Memphis team which is very talented, but I do kind of like how the Sixers match up. So hopefully it starts off with a win tonight, and they can build off that momentum too.
And this comment here from my man Joe Bucci here, who always checks in on the show, and I appreciate the comments. But this is that negative feeling, or that disheartened feeling that Sixers fans have. Embiid is always injured. Harden might not want to be here. This is just what this Sixers organization has programmed us to think and feel. But honestly, this statement is just so not necessary. I mean, Embiid is banged up, but knock on wood, he's healthy right now. He's playing through the nagging injuries. The Harden rumors, they're just rumors. I'm not worried about that. Nobody should be worried about that. And this is the thing right here that is why everybody's down on this team right now. Thoughts on this here?
Yeah, I mean, when you look down the Sixers team, there's a lot of guys with plenty to prove this year. James Harden, Joel Embiid, and Doc Rivers all have their postseason demons that they need to fight. Health is the biggest thing for me. Like when we're talking about what we need and what we're looking for the stretch of the season, they just got to stay fully intact and healthy. Embiid hasn't had that fully healthy playoffs yet. The only time that he has was in the bubble after that extended break, and then Ben Simmons was hurt that year, so it wasn't a fully constructed team. As there, we've seen the freak injuries, whether it's getting hit in the face, the torn meniscus, the stomach pains, getting hit in the face twice, once by Markel, once by Pascal Siakam. So there just hasn't been that like get him 100% in the floor in the playoffs. I think he's really looking forward to that, and I think he can really go on a stretch run in a way that he hasn't, if that is the case. But they got to make sure that is. So there's going to be something key, as much as we're talking about how difficult these matchups are, how often 25 games in 45 days. The Sixers have to have a plan in place to make sure we're not overdoing it in the regular season, that these guys are locked in and prepared for playoffs. I know load management is an ugly word nowadays, but there's got to be some scheduled rest days and times where it's not, we can't have him play all 25 games in 45 days and expect him to be fresh for the playoffs. So there's got to be a balance there. And yeah, these are all fair concerns. I mean, Harden's been known to not come up his best in the postseason. Embiid has had his shortcomings. Doc Rivers has the most playoff losses of any coach ever. So there's definitely reasons to poke holes, but I think if this team comes in 100%, and health is the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, I mean, you just touched on literally like 97 different things there that I love to talk about and think about, and they keep rolling through my head. But Embiid and the rest is I still think, we got some other questions we're going to get to in a second here in comments in the comment section, but Embiid's health to me is still paramount to anything else for the Sixers team's success, obviously. And everyone talks about all his nagging injuries and injuries in the past. I am still slightly concerned about, and nobody really talks about it, you constantly see him stretching that shoulder out in games. And no one's talking about what's wrong with that. And that, to me, is a massive concern for me going in. But he also, when you look at him and you watch him play, and even All-Star Weekend, when he played in the All-Star game, the little bit of it I watched, he just has in his eyes a different look this year.
Yeah.
Like in the last 2 years, I would have said that he is solely focused, like not solely focused. He wanted to win a title, but he also wanted the MVP. He wanted the recognition, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, I think Joel Embiid is focused on one thing and one thing only. He doesn't care about any of the other stuff. He wants to get past that second round. That is his goal. That is his main focus right now. But to me, the only thing that's going to stop him from getting there at this point is whatever's wrong with that shoulder. So the load management, the rest, the managing his minutes, it's crucial at this point.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think there's been some growth and maturity on his end, him kind of turning a page in his mindset where that truly is kind of his focus. And I think he has finally accepted, and to Embiid's, I don't know if credit's the right word here, but like he absolutely has been disrespected when we talk about the MVP, the lack of national buzz. This guy never making an all NBA first team, not even an all-star starter this year. Like there's a ton of stuff that is nuts considering the talent and the production that he has just put forth on the table. But I think he's kind of realizing like the only way that he's going to get that growth in respect in the way that he desires and deserves is if he can equate it to playoff success. So I do think he's focused on that. He's locked in. I think he's taking some strides forward as like a leader on this team too, being more sure of himself and not as, he stepped back from the antics and the trolling and everything else that I do love about him. And I hope he still doesn't fully push down, but I hope he still saves himself. But yeah, I do think he's more mature this year. He's locked in on making sure that second round is a true destination, and that's all they can hope for.
Yeah, I kind of think he's learned from his past mistakes and letting his emotions get in the way and sometimes distract him and the team from, getting over. I mean, obviously during the Ben Simmons matchup, a month or so ago, obviously let the emotions get in the way a little bit in that game as well. But, for the most part, he's learned to control and check those emotions at the door. And I think that's why we're seeing it's hard to imagine that he's continuing to get better, but he is actually a better player this year than he was last year.
Yeah, I feel like for 3 years now, I've kind of said like, all right, I think this might be Joel Embiid's peak. Like this might be as good as he gets. And then just next year he comes back even better and has added more layers to his game. And those emotions are something that, for me specifically, has like attracted me to Joel as a basketball player. I think he's one of the more normal human beings across the entire NBA, which is kind of rare. And like that Ben Simmons game, like you mentioned, he definitely got a little razzled with it, but it's like it was very clear from opening tip, like this man hates Ben Simmons more than anyone in the city of Philadelphia, and all he wanted to do was just dunk on him, which I love that for him. I love that he has that side of him, and he isn't as like guarded as a lot of guys are with their emotions. So it does draw me to him, and it makes me want to see him win even more.
Yeah. All right. So Casey chiming in here. Do they need to just perform or overperform to get that chip? Slash, or do you see them underperforming as they've done in the past? I'll let you answer this because I actually have quite a strong opinion on this right here. What do you think? Do they just have to perform at how they're doing, or do they have to take it up another level here?
They definitely got to take it up a little bit. They're going to need the best version of both James Harden and Joel Embiid come playoff time if they're going to have a shot. Like, the bottom line is they need both those guys to be dynamic superstars. And James Harden, I do think, deserves a ton of credit this year for the improved fitness, the improved burst. That's the biggest thing. The numbers all look great. Their numbers are all improved off last year. The efficiency is much better. But the biggest thing that stood out to me is there's just that burst in his game that wasn't here last year at all. He's calling guys out one-on-one, able to get to the basket much better. And that opens up everything for his game, because when he can do that, and he still obviously has the step back, he's shooting a three-point at nearly a career high rate. So if this version of James Harden continues in the postseason, that's huge for the Sixers. And that is also crucial to opening things up for Joel. Like, it works together. He has never had that kind of threat in the pick and roll, a guy that he can space the floor with as well as get him the ball in that way. So if it's the best version of these two, that's going to be the biggest key. And perimeter defense is my biggest question as far as needing something to step up. That's why PJ Tucker is here to, as much as there's been noise and complaints about Tucker, if he has a great playoff run, that's all that matters. And that's the entire reason he was brought in. And that's what he should pretty much fully be judged off, is how he's performed in that. And they're still going to need other guys to step up. I like the Jalen McDaniels move. I think he's going to be a nice piece here. D'Anthony Melton's been very good. He's going to need to step up and guard some key guys in matchups. So they're going to need the best version of just about everyone if it is going to be a true deep run. But I do think they have a better chance than I think people are giving them credit.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there, and it's funny that you bring up James Harden and the pick and roll and stuff like that. And I don't know if I'm assuming you saw the Daryl Morey conversation on the
Yes.
Right to Ricky Sanchez podcast last night, and him saying that he doesn't even know why they don't run the pick and roll even more, which kind of leads me to I want to get to Adam and Joe, your other questions in a second. But to me, the Joel Embiid health, the James Harden staying on this path that he's been on this year to the playoffs, huge, all huge. But to me, it still comes down to Doc Rivers and how he's managed his team. You hit on it a few minutes ago. The most playoff losses by any coach. I mean, this is a book that we've read time and time again. And Doc Rivers, to me, outside of barring a major injury, Doc Rivers and how he manages this team, which I've said it a few times, and I don't think anybody's heard because I've bashed Doc Rivers a lot. I think Doc Rivers is doing his best coaching job as a Sixer this year so far. But still, is it going to be enough? Because we've read this story and how he manages his team come playoff time. Is it enough? So thoughts on Doc Rivers and how he's handling this team so far?
Yeah, it's going to be put to the test. I agree with you in the fact that I think he's been pretty good as a coach this year overall. And he has impressed me with kind of how he's managed things, how he's done things. Everything he does is going to be looked over under the microscope by Philadelphia, and especially the backup center minutes. That's going to be something to watch. Another interesting comment by Daryl Morey on the Ricky yesterday was when asked about the backup center situation, as he said, I'm very confident in Paul Reed, Dwayne Dedman, and drawing a blank, and PJ Tucker as our options. So didn't even mention Montrezl Harrell in that, which I think was notable and something that should be paid attention to. So I think that they're going to roll with those as the three. Montrezl Harrell has been disappointing. I was happy about the signing, and it stinks how kind of washed up he's looked, because there was a time where Montrezl Harrell was valuable as an offensive weapon and a guy that was playable, but it just hasn't been that version of him this year. PJ Tucker, I do think is going to step up and play some backup center minutes from there. But I guess how Doc just handles things, how he staggers things, they kind of have the tools in place where they could conceivably pull the right matchups, but it's not, they don't have a cure-all option at that backup center and beyond that. So the playoffs are going to be the real litmus test to see if he can do it. And there is fair reason for concern for sure. But if we're just looking at what he's done so far, I think there's reason for encouragement as well.
All right, so Adam, we'll get to yours in a second, but because we're talking about the backup center and everything, I want to address Joe's comment here. Who will they add in the buyout market? Obviously, there's a lot of curious reasons on why Dwayne Dedmon was the guy. They didn't wait to see who else, was bought out. There's other names floating, and I haven't had a chance to talk Sixers on this show in a couple days, and I want to just calm everybody. Everybody's freaking out about the Kevin Love situation and him not coming here. I don't think he was the answer. Dwayne Dedmon was not the answer as well. But obviously, the way Daryl Morey thinks of Montrezl Harrell, by him not mentioning his name, do the Sixers? I mean, I know they're really tight up against the cap, and there's very little money to be spent to add somebody else to this team. Have they made the right decision, not attacking this buyout market more aggressively? Like Daryl Morey did say that he was going to attack this market, and then Dwayne Dedmon, and that's pretty much been it at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they jumped on Dedmon right away. I was kind of frustrated on how quickly they acted on that because I can't imagine there was quite the line of offers for Dwayne Dedmon around the NBA. So it kind of surprised me just how swiftly they acted there. Their lineup's at 15, or their roster is at 15 right now, so they would have to release someone to make a move. They do have enough money underneath the cap and underneath the luxury tax line to add one more minimum contract. But when guys are on the buyout market, there's typically a reason for it. Like, you're kind of not finding your missing piece. And it's been a stronger buyout market than usual this year when we're talking about guys like Patrick Beverley, Will Barton, Reggie Jackson even hitting it. So there's been some intriguing names out here more so than the usual. I personally wanted them to make a run at Patrick Beverley. I would have been very happy with that. And he had the James Harden and Doc Rivers connection. So it felt like a piece that could have made sense. I thought he could up the mentality, the playoff push, something like that. But that he obviously ended up in Chicago isn't the case. It'll be interesting to see if they do anything else. If a guy scratches loose, I know there's a ton of talk about Nerlens Noel, but it doesn't look like he's going to get bought out now. That would have been very nice as a backup center option. So hopefully they make one more move, but they're kind of at the mercy of seeing who shakes free. I saw a report yesterday of them being interested in Will Barton, but I saw some Sixers people kind of shooting that down. So I don't really expect that to be the case either. But who knows? Maybe one more player, but they would, again, have to make some sort of roster movement to make that possible.
You hit on two things there. First off, the Patrick Beverley. I thought he would have been a great addition for his veteran leadership, the defensive aspect. He's not going to score anything, but we lost something when we lost Matisse in that trade. So he might add a little bit of that. But anybody that they bring in at this point in the buyout market is going to make that much of a difference between a title and a non-title this year. I mean, that's not what the buyout market is. It has been strong this year. But buyout market guys are not getting you a title. You know what I mean? They're just little depth pieces that help ease some of the pain. If Joel Embiid has some foul trouble or a nagging injury, or eases some of the pain if James Harden misses a game or two. That's what the buyout market is. It's not to help you win a title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I don't want to say damaged goods because that's a little rude to it, but like. Yeah, there's a reason why they're there. These are guys that teams are willing to let go for free and give teams a chance at without getting anything in return. So you got to keep in mind, like, and sometimes it is well intended. Sometimes it is a player, a veteran on a struggling team that is let go for a contending run. But in general, you're not going to find your solve all case on the buyout market. You got to kind of do that through free agency, through trades, or obviously development as well. So yeah, you can't fully rely on that.
Some of these names that have been bought out, yes, they're big names, but they're on playoff teams. Like, I look at Kevin Love. I know the Cavs have a lot of young bigs that they're trying to get minutes, but the Cavs are the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference. They're trying to sell to their fan base that they're a playoff team. Them cutting Kevin Love, I mean, guys, if he's not getting minutes on the Cavs, why wouldn't the Cavs just keep him on their bench as that veteran guy that's been to a playoffs, who's won a title before? There's a reason why they're cutting these guys, especially playoff teams. So it always frustrates me when, people freak out when they see a big name available and the Sixers don't pounce on it. Well, there's a reason these guys are available at this point. So it's a little frustrating to when I hear some of that talk. All right, I want to get to Adam. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
The Kevin Love was a weird one too. Miami could have offered him like 5 times the money and a larger role there. Like, as much as like it would have been an intriguing piece to add to the Sixers team if it was Kevin Love at his best, he still is kind of a weird mix of, is he a true five? Is he the backup five when Joel's not there? He could possibly play next to Joel, and he's a better rebounder than Georges Niang, but Niang is a better shooter at this point in their career. So there wasn't like a clear define what exactly he would do on this team versus he might honestly walk into Miami and start. So I don't think the Sixers fans should be too upset about that. That's a great opportunity for him, and a larger role and more money kind of all pointed to him heading to South Beach.
I mean, I saw Sixers fans redoing the Sixers starting lineup with Kevin Love in the starting. I'm like, guys, that's not what Kevin Love would be brought here to do. And yeah, the minutes he would take from Georges Niang, which whatever. I mean, there's not that much there. But we're talking about all these role players and different players. Adam had brought up a few minutes ago what players outside of Joel Embiid and James Harden need to step up the most. Not be the best, but just step up in this stretch run. And I want to start with one name here and get your thoughts, and that's Tobias Harris. I've been saying for a week or two now that Tobias Harris's hot stretch has obviously cooled in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And I think out of all the players on this team not named James Harden and Joel Embiid, not getting Tobias Harris to a 20-point a game average or anything, but him stepping up and getting some consistency in his game is probably the next most critical thing on this team right now.
Yeah, if he can return to the version of Tobias Harris that started the year, that will be huge for the Sixers. And what I mean by that is quicker decisions with the ball, catch and shoot 3-pointers, stepping up defensively, being capable of guarding the opponent's like top perimeter option, and which he's shown flashes of, but has kind of fallen off. He had a rough ending the past, I would say, like month and a half before the All-Star break ensued. Maybe a rest is good for him, but yeah, they got to get him back to being that guy. He can't be hesitant off the catch and shoot, can't be pump faking and dribbling in the long twos as he did the towards the end there. So yeah, they got to get him back on track. When he's playing at his best and is at the best version of himself in the way the Sixers need, he's a very beneficial player to this team. But when he's not, it definitely hurts them. So they got to find a way to get him back. I don't think that's his natural best way to play. So it's definitely taken some adjustment from Tobias, which I think he deserves credit for. But they got to figure it out and get him back to just being that guy that can make those quick decisions, can snap it. And a high volume and high level 3-point shooter and an above average defender is really what they need from him.
It's funny that a guy of Tobias's talent. So we always talk about players high, like their peaks and their bottoms. Like what's their ceiling and what's their floor. And Tobias Harris, when he's playing well, his ceiling is so high. But when he's playing bad, he doesn't like bottom out as an average player. Like he bottoms out to a net negative. Like that. There's a big difference between good and bad Tobias Harris, and we need at least as close to that good as possible, because when he's bad, when fans jump and overreact to bench this guy, cut this guy, trade, like when he's playing bad, it's not overreacting. He is that bad, but he's that important to getting him back in that right track there.
Yeah, and it stinks because at the beginning of this year, like I really do think we saw the best version of Tobias. I was super impressed, giving him a ton of credit for the adjustments he made to his game, finding a way to fit in a way that hasn't been natural to his play style throughout his whole career, but that has kind of disappeared over the ending leading up to the All-Star break. So they got to get him back to being that guy and find a way to get him producing, because as you mentioned, like he's going to play a key role in this team. He's going to be a large part of the rotation, and they got to get him delivering on those minutes.
So Casey's saying Shake needs to step up as someone, but somebody off the bench. So obviously Tyrese Maxey's on the bench, but based off of Casey's question, he's not counting Tyrese Maxey as part of the bench, even though he comes off the bench, because he's still, for the most part, most times playing starter minutes. We'll get to the bench in a second as a whole, but Tyrese Maxey, I'm still on the fence of whether he should be on the bench or not. He looks good at it sometimes, other times he doesn't. He's obviously struggling with the role, with the story of him having to call his parents to talk it out and stuff like that. Where are you on this Maxey bench role? And should Doc make a change, or should he keep rolling it out and seeing how this plays out over the next 25?
Yeah, I've been torn on it as well.
Yeah.
Like, on one hand, the Sixers definitely are doing this to combat the defensive issues, because a defensive backcourt of James Harden and Tyrese Maxey is a nightmare. And if they have the desire of being a top defense, it's pretty much impossible with those two playing the bulk of the minutes, because James Harden has his defensive lapses, and those are largely Harden's fault of not chasing guys around screen, not being active off ball, being lost. And on the other side of things, Maxey is just simply too small to guard a lot of matchups. Like we're talking about if they're matching up with the Celtics, hypothetically, you need either James Harden or Tyrese Maxey to guard either Jaylen Brown, or like you can't hide both of them is kind of the issue. So that's where bringing DeAnthony Melton into the lineup kind of changes things. You do have a plus defender there, a guy who can stick with a true perimeter threat. But at the same time, there are times where Maxey becomes too much of an afterthought in this offense, in the Sixers team, which they can't have happen. They have to find a way to maximize all of these guys, and Maxey included in that, by when it works well, the off the bench, and he brings a spark and he changes the game in the minutes, it looks awesome. But there's also been times where he just kind of has been lost. For me, it's kind of been less about where he's going and where he's fitting in versus what his role is. A lot of times I've seen Doc do just like throw Maxey out with 4 bench guys, and it's been like, Tyrese, go figure it out, which I don't think is the best thing for his development. And so it's been an in-between year. I'm curious if Doc does go back to Maxey in the starting lineup at some point. I think there's matchups where it works and you can get away with it versus some that is better off bringing him off the bench and kind of separating the Harden and Maxey minutes. But Maxey's also benefited by having a playmaker next to him. So I would like to see at least some flexibility. Let's play around with it in these couple games here before we fully decide on it for the playoffs. But yeah, I don't know. I've seen some mixed results.
Yeah, some players just don't have the mentality to be able to come off the bench. You know, I said even last year that Maxey was struggling he was deferring too much to Joel and James Harden. You got to get those two guys obviously in the flow of the game first. So he was struggling early in the game, but also coming off the bench, sometimes that spark just isn't there. So there's got to be some kind of middle ground there for him. But it all comes down to Doc Rivers, and as long as Tyrese Maxey's on the court at the end of the game, I guess it really doesn't matter who starts the game to an extent, as long as you can teach Tyrese Maxey how to mentally prepare to come off the bench. Problem is, 2 or 3 times, there's 3 minutes left in the game, and Tyrese Maxey's still sitting on the bench, whether we're up a few or down a few. And that's the problem. And that goes back to the question, what's Doc going to do to screw up or get this team over the hump? And do you agree that no matter what we do at the beginning of the game, Maxey's got to be one of the 5 on the court at the end of the game, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of circle back to the same answer with like defensive lineups, and like there's going to be times where I think like for the Celtics matchup, I really can't picture the Sixers coming out on top with a closing lineup of Harden and Maxey on the floor. And that is like a tough pill to swallow at this point, because there's things that he do that are necessary to the team. When we talk about from a transition aspect, the pace that he plays with, that kind of just flash of energy, being able to get downhill. And as a shooter, he's still the real deal, a guy that can space the floor. But we got to find a way to do it both ways. And if Melton is still connecting on threes at a high level, still capable of getting out in transition, kind of a little bit of a Maxey light on offense, but much better on defense, there could be weight to it. And I do think there's to the starting conversation, it's definitely overblown, because like you said, the closing lineups are more important. But I do think with like the Sixers group, because they have a ton of guys, and it's been this way for several years, where there's kind of unique aspects to all these guys, and that they have not necessarily the most well-rounded basketball players that they kind of are choosing from here. Like, you got to pick and choose the right lineups, the right matchups for each game, and that's where the pressure does get put on Doc Rivers.
All right, so with this bench, we've got 2 comments here. One, Shake needs to step up as somebody off the bench. You know, Joe saying Harris, maybe make him a bench. You can address either of those, both of those, whatever order you want. I don't know how you would make Harris a bench player, because I don't know who you would start in his place. And Shake, I mean, yeah, we've seen a little growth, in my opinion, in Shake this year, but I still think that he needs to do a little bit more in his limited 15 whatever minutes a game that he's getting regularly.
Yeah, Shake's a rhythm player for sure. The more he plays, the better he looks. But that's a difficult spot when you're kind of on the outskirts of the rotation and not a guy logging consistent minutes on a nightly basis. We've seen the ups and downs from him this year, as he started the year completely out of the rotation, not even getting minutes at all. Then we see the injuries to Harden and Maxey, where Shake steps into a starting role, and he played terrific during that stretch. I mean, he was nearing on triple doubles. Had his first career double, was putting up like 24, 10, and 9 games. And the part that appealed to me about his game was that stuff outside of scoring, because it feels like for most of Shake's career, it's been he's either kind of a microwave scorer that comes in, or he kind of doesn't change the game. The fact he was doing some playmaking, helping out on the boards, doing some things just outside of putting the ball in the basket was something that I was like, okay, maybe this guy can grow a little bit, can stick a little bit. I don't think he's quite been as effective at that in the recent stretch toward the All-Star break. So I would like to see that come back, to him finding ways to impact the game outside of just scoring. As far as Harris goes, I can't see him being shifted to a bench role just based off the contract and the commitment and how much they respect him as a leader and veteran on this team. But I do think there's weight to kind of shifting him and giving him more time with like the quote unquote bench units. Like if there's the Sixers seem determined to keep Harden and Embiid together in the rotation, which I also disagree with. I think that one of those guys should be on the court for all 48 minutes. Like you have to split them and make sure, and maybe that changes in playoffs. But I know Daryl Morey and Doc Rivers have talked about it. Like they believe they're so effective together that it's worth like keeping them, and they're obviously going to close together and play significant minutes. But I don't know. I think if they're determined for that to be the case, maybe give Tobias his moments with the bench unit and guys around him where he can be more of the focal point. Maybe that helps him stay in his rhythm. So I think staggering things, giving him more run with the second unit could be valuable, and we haven't seen a lot of that. So I would be okay with that to be played with for sure.
Anybody else in that bench role? I mean, George Niang is, in my opinion, what he is at this point. He's a guy that, as long as you keep him in a certain minutes limit, he's going to have his good games. He's going to have his bad games. Is there anybody specifically else, that you're really zoning in on in these next 3 to 5 games to see what they're, going to do with this team? Is it McDaniels, the new addition? Is it, where is your focus going to be on this team?
Yeah, I want to see more of McDaniels and what exactly his role is going to be. I wasn't a huge Jalen McDaniels guy when they made the trade, but there's always this weird thing when you kind of take a player off a bad team, like the situation with McDaniels. Like the reputation for him in Charlotte was that he could make some dumb decisions with the ball. His shot quality wasn't always good, that he would kind of overshoot and have a little bit of like Daniel House in him in a way. But they have not seen that version of him in Philadelphia at all yet. He's been very on his best behavior, filling his role. And part of that could just be having a clear role and having a more defined role around guys like James Harden, like Joel Embiid. He's not going to be a guy ever creating his own three-pointer off the dribble or anything like that. The Sixers aren't going to ask him from that. So it could also work to the benefit of having a clear lane to run in. And he's super useful just as kind of a two-way guy. I know we talked about Matisse a little bit and brushed over that. I think he's an upgrade over Matisse just because he's playable in the playoffs, because he has the two-way impact. He's a true athlete on this team, which they've lacked. He's a lob threat, which brings something to this roster, a new element to their offense, and still a plus defender in the way that he can guard everybody in the perimeter. He ends up their second tallest guy on this roster. He's the Dwayne Dedmon now is since he signed takes that, but behind them is Jalen McDaniels standing at 6'10", and for him to be a true wing and have that size is worthwhile for sure.
I kind of forgot we even had Daniel House on this roster till you mentioned his name a second ago. You know what? I admit all my mistakes. I will admit also when I was right, and I said that was a dumb signing when he was brought to this team in the offseason. And you mentioned Matisse, and I just want to, get off track for 1 second on this Sixers team. Whoever it was out there that went and defaced the Matisse mural in Philly, what the hell are you doing? This guy, Matisse, was nothing but a class act in Philadelphia for his time here, and you're going to go and ruin that great mural. When I saw that a day or two ago on social media, I was really disappointed in Philly fans for that.
Yeah, that's super messed up. Never want to see that for anyone. And like you said, Matisse has been a class act. I love the little thank you Philly that he signed there. I thought that was awesome, very cool. So yeah, that was a complete bummer. What a shame. And totally
And
messed
a
up.
really good piece of artwork too. You know what I mean? You just ruined it there. All right, we'll get back to the Sixers in a second. I want to talk about the rest of the league for a few minutes. Obviously, in the Eastern Conference, it's the Celtics and the Bucks and the Sixers. The Cavs are just behind us. Is it a 3-man race, or do the Cavaliers, are they a team you worry about? Are there any other teams below the Cavaliers? Because honestly, with everything that happened in Brooklyn, I think Brooklyn falls a little bit. The Knicks don't really scare me. The Pacers are a good team, but they're not really a concern for me either. Is it a 3-team race, a 4-team race, or anybody else that you're keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I think it is a 3-team race between Sixers, Celtics, and Bucks, and I would argue the Celtics and Bucks should be the 2 favorites in the NBA across. So I think making it out of the East is a pretty good ticket there. The Nets were a team that still scared me when they were fully constructed, and I don't want to say disappointed because it's obviously worked for the Sixers' benefit, but I guess surprising that they did blow up as rapidly as they did, because I think if that team stayed together the whole season, like they had a chance this year, and they were showing some things and playing together. So kind of crazy how quickly that changed in the span of like a week. And obviously both those guys, Kyrie and Kevin Durant, heading to the Western Conference now. So the Suns got much stronger. The Mavericks got much stronger. Both teams I think will compete out there. But as far as the Eastern Conference goes, yeah, I think it's Celtics, Bucks and Sixers pretty much in that order, and that's all that scares me. I think this Cavs team is very good, but still a step away and still young and in their developmental process. So they can definitely win a series, but I don't see them going farther than that. And the Sixers should feel all right about that being the race, and they just got to find a way to pull it out.
So the question then is, if it's a 3-team race, how the Sixers match up with this Bucks and Celtics team or teams, and if they match up better against one or the other, what do you think it is?
Definitely match up better against the Bucks, I think, and both of them are going to pose some challenge. Both are very deep, very well constructed, and very good basketball teams. So it's going to be a struggle. The thing that's the biggest concern for me for either of these is the guarding the Celtics on the perimeter with that duo of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. That's where we're talking about where we need the PJ Tucker to step up, Tobias Harris to step up, the Anthony Melton, and that's a matchup specifically where I think it's difficult to leave Maxey on the floor for extended periods. So working around that for the Bucks, the tough matchup that's going to be something to watch there is really Brook Lopez is the thing that concerns me, because he's a true center who actually just sits out there and spaces the floor as a 3-point shooter on the offensive end. And that's kind of hard for Joel. He's not a guy that likes to drift in the perimeter to defend out there, specifically when he's guarding centers. But Brook Lopez is a legitimate enough shooter that needs to be the case. So there's going to have to be some sort of schematic change there. When I kind of look at it and how I think it should play out, to me, that turns into Embiid matching up with Giannis one-on-one, which would also be a blast to watch, and I hope is the case. So I think I feel better about the Sixers matching up with the Bucks when just looking at that, the way things are all constructed around Giannis. I think they can build a wall to stop him in a fairly effective way. PJ Tucker's had some really great flashes guarding Giannis as well. So I feel a little better about the Bucks matchup for sure, but both are very talented teams that are going to cause issues.
I talk about timing with building teams and going all in and stuff like that. And we're all on this, mentality that it's got to get to the Eastern Conference Finals or bust. But you're talking about or some people saying finals or bust even. It's kind of hard to get. It would be kind of hard to get disappointed if they drop that second round to the Celtics or the Bucks, knowing that these teams are, I hate to admit it, they're slightly better than the Sixers, both teams. Well, the Celtics, I think, are a little bit more than slightly better than the Celtics or the Sixers. So, if we drop the second round or the conference finals to one of these teams, if it's a hard fought 6 or 7 game series, it's not quite as much of a disappointment in my mind, because, the timing of this Sixers team is not perfect to line up with the rest of this league.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, but I think if that is the case, then it's also you got to swallow that pill of like, wow, we've put all this together and we're still not quite as good as these teams. And that also doesn't sit great. So I think there is a ton of pressure on this team. I think they have to find a way to at least get to the conference finals and take somewhat of a step forward because there's a lot kind of lingering on this year. As much as I think there's too much talk about the James Harden rumors and where that is, he's still like going to opt out of his contract and either renegotiate with the Sixers or seek elsewhere. If there is like a disastrous blow up in the second round, I think that very much increases the chances of him going elsewhere. Doc Rivers, there's a lot on the line for him. He's definitely the first fall guy if there is a disappointing entrance this year. So I think there's a ton on the line this year. And Joel, like as much as he's been a poster boy for loyalty across the NBA, like we know how this league works. And if he starts to get sick of like not seeing a true steps forward to a contender, I wouldn't even blame him if he starts to think like, maybe I shot myself around or looked to end it elsewhere. And then we're looking right back into a rebuilding era. So this is the time where they still need to be competing, still need to be looking to win. And this is a big year how it shakes out.
Yeah, I mean, you basically hinted at what I was going to say, which is there's a lot of legacies on the line this year. You know what I mean? You got Daryl Morey. I said it the day we hired him. He's never won anything. Other than Executive of the Year award, his teams he builds have never won a title. James Harden, he's one of the greatest players of all time. Never won a title. Has James Harden even played in an NBA Finals yet?
Conference finals. I think with the Thunder, he was in the finals, but as far as being his own team, the Rockets, conference finals was as far as he got.
Exactly. I mean, so you got Doc Rivers, one of the greatest coaches of all time, supposedly, but hasn't reached a final since Boston. And then of course Joel Embiid. There's a lot of legacies on the line here, and there's going to be a lot of fall guys. And if this does not work out, if we don't get past the second round, there's going to be a lot of changes. And if you're Daryl Morey, you're going to have to sit down with, Joel Embiid after the season and ask him how to help map out what's the best path forward. But the legacy's on the line right now for the Sixers team. It's kind of a crazy situation.
Yeah, it definitely is. There's a lot at stake for all these guys. I will say, like, for the James Harden thing, all intentions were he came to Philadelphia with the goal of getting a championship. And that's why I don't take too much weight to the Rockets rumors, is you're pretty much like cementing your legacy as a loser if that's the case. If you want to head back to Houston and just chill out for the rest of your career, because that team is several years away from even competing to any extent.
Even if
so
you throw Harden on there.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I do think Harden wants this. I will give like those Rockets team more credit than I think they get. Like going 7 games in the conference finals against the Warriors team with Kevin Durant is like an impressive feat there. And they were pretty close to punching their ticket on a couple occasions. That Warriors team was a straight buzzsaw that they kind of had to go up against in the West during that era. And they were close. They had some chances. So I do give Daryl Morey some credit and James Harden more than I think they necessarily get. But the bottom line is it's a results-driven world that we live in. They didn't get it. And yeah, they need to make something happen in Philly.
Pretty close isn't getting the job done. It's just pretty close. That's all it is. Real quick, because I wanted to talk that legacy thing there, but back to the rest of the NBA, the Western Conference. You mentioned Brooklyn blowing it up. When you look at the Western Conference standings, you got a lot of different teams at the top. The Golden State's not at the top. Phoenix is not at the top. Denver, Memphis, Sacramento. That's your 1, 2, 3. Phoenix. Whenever Kevin Durant comes back and starts playing for that Phoenix team, are Phoenix and Dallas at the 5 and 6 seed where they currently are? In your mind? I'm sorry.
I think they're both going to climb. I think they're both very legitimate contenders. The Suns, I think Kevin Durant's going to fit into that style, that team just fine, very well, actually. I think that's going to be a match. I also believe in this Mavericks team quite a bit. I mean, Luka Doncic, is unbelievable. And just every time I watch him, I get blown away by the things that he does. And I think you get just a final stretch of Kyrie Irving on his best behavior is pretty much the best case a team can ask for. Like, I think there's going to be just enough of a honeymoon period for them to make a playoff push to make it work. And I do think he still fits in that offensive system. I mean, Luka was touching like historic usage rates and offensive numbers for how much he was touching the ball. They needed another guy. And as much as there was a ton of rightfully so, I guess, complaints about Jalen Brunson walking, Kyrie Irving's now a better version of Jalen Brunson and a guy that can elevate that team further. So I think that Mavericks team is capable of making a deep run as well. So yeah, to me, those are the two scariest teams out West. Denver, I'm always going to question, and we don't got to get fully into the Jokic and Embiid thing, but I've seen with my own eyes them have to pull Nikola Jokic off the floor to get a defensive stop. And if that's going to be the case, he's going to be picked on and really tested defensively this postseason. And until he answers that, I think teams are going to continue looking at them as not true contenders. And Golden State, you can never count them out because injuries have kind of mucked up their season so far. They haven't had time to fully gel or get together. But if they get healthy ahead of the postseason, it's tough to feel good about guarding them or beating them in a 7-game series.
Absolutely. When you look at Dallas and Phoenix, they have the chance to really, do two things. Phoenix proved one of my theories wrong that I've said all the time, and that's making a big superstar addition at the trade deadline normally does not result in a finals run for a team because it takes time. Normally it's the next year that they make that run. But Kevin Durant fitting with that team is so perfect. If he can get healthy soon enough, he could prove that theory of mine and honestly prove that theory across the NBA because I don't think a big superstar's ever been traded and won a finals or won a title right away like that. He could prove that wrong. And on the Mavs side, we don't want to talk about Jokic. We just don't. But if anybody was going to win the MVP outside of Joel Embiid, I would not cry if it was Luka Doncic.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? He's that good. He's having, even before the Kyrie Irving, I mean, he's having a hell of a season this year. So, and he doesn't do anything that makes you want to hate him. You actually want to root for the guy to an extent, even as a Sixers fan. So those two teams there, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if one of those teams is playing for the Western Conference Finals when we get to that point later down the line.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think both those teams are the real deal. I kind of have I have faith in both of them for different reasons. The Mavericks have sneakily become kind of my Western Conference teams. Like watching at night, I love the way Luka plays. I like the offensive system they kind of have is having 3-point shooters, the way they cycle offensively, the way they kind of cover up for him defensively, and Luka still holds his own as much as he can. So I do think adding Kyrie Irving to that mix is a big deal, and I will kind of be rooting for them in the West, as weird as that kind of sounds.
I don't think it sounds weird. I mean, you got to root for somebody else out there, So So we'll start with we'll wrap this show up here with two things here. First and foremost, tonight Memphis is in South Philly. Sixers are the early favorite right now, 3.5 points. Thoughts on this game? Do the Sixers come out with a win tonight? And how does that happen?
Yeah, I do think they come out with a win tonight. I think they lead out of the break with a statement with the home crowd. They've had some time off, got the bodies fully rested. And this, like I said, this Grizzlies team kind of stumbled into the All-Star break, got cold towards the end. So who knows how they come out of this. But the Sixers, when they're playing at their peak, there's very few teams that can beat them. So I think if they look at themselves, they come out clicking a little bit, and they can go to a win here. So I think a big Joel game. I think they rotate right. I think Maxey starts to find his stride a little more. I don't necessarily expect a huge Harden game. He's probably going to shake off some cobwebs of those 9 days off for sure. But yeah, I
would like to know. I haven't seen any TikToks or any videos. I want to know what James Harden was doing the last 9 days. I really do.
Yeah, something more fun than Salt Lake City, I would guess.
Why anybody? I mean, that's the worst city in the world to have an All-Star game weekend, and yeah, that's not good. And the other key thing looking at tonight, when I was looking at the preview for tonight's game, was that there is not one Sixers on the injury list or injury report going into this. And yes, Joel Embiid's banged up, but every 7'2" monster of a player at this point of a season would be banged up. So I think it's clutch and crucial that he's healthy at the start of the stretch, as healthy as he could be. So managing his minutes and stuff like that, I need to see. I know it's a tough stretch. I need the Sixers to see the Sixers dominate some of these games, so that you can do the old school load management and try to keep Joel at 32, 34 minutes a game as often as possible.
Yeah, and I think how they came into the break with that strong ending to the before the All-Star break is big in that. Like that should be weighed kind of heavily in, and that they not that they have that much of a gap because the East is still pretty tight, but like that Cavs win was pretty notable that last game before it because that is the team knocking behind them. They now have hold the tiebreaker for the rest of the season and build up an extra game of separation there. So they did give themselves kind of as much breathing room as they can once they kept their head above water when guys were injured. And when they were fully healthy, they kind of have produced the way they needed to. So now let's check one after another off the list as they face off these contenders, and hopefully it doesn't come down to some key games down the stretch, and they can kind of take their foot off to the gas in the minutes extent and like a games played extent.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, and finally here to wrap this up, gut feelings. We're talking the final 25 game stretch, but the 25 game stretch is just setting up the playoffs. Will the Sixers in your gut? When you're sitting there and you have to look at yourself in the mirror before you write an article or do the Pick Swap podcast, gut feeling, are the Sixers going to at least get past this second round of the playoffs?
Yeah, my honest gut feeling and opinion is I think they get past the Bucks in the second round and lose to the Celtics in the conference finals is my prediction.
So if that happens, then will you consider the season's success? If they lose, say they get past the Bucks and then they lose to the Celtics in say like 5 games and the Celtics just pretty much mop the floor with the Sixers, is that a success? Or do they got to push the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals?
Yeah, they got to push them. It's got to be a fight. It's got to be close. They got to be within striking distance of the Celtics team, who I do think have start to finish been the best team in the NBA this season. So they got to at least show that they're in the same breath, win a couple games as them for it to be a success in my mind.
Yeah, I can't believe that there was a stretch last year, and I think also during the offseason a little bit, where the Celtics thought, or at least the rumors were, that the Celtics were going to break up Tatum and Brown. And you just watch this Celtics team play, and you're like, why would those rumors even ever begin? Because those two there together, I know it's not a perfect team, but they play so well together, and they're just such a good team. And I agree with you. I think they could beat the Bucks. That is why I keep thinking that even though you said at the beginning of the show, playoff seeding doesn't matter. Let's just focus on playing well. Like, if we can avoid the Celtics, I think we can win the Eastern Conference. That's my gut feeling. But I just don't see a way or a scenario that we avoid the Celtics in the playoffs. And that's why if we face the Celtics in the second round, we're in trouble. If we face them in the conference finals, we're in trouble. So my gut feeling is we lose whenever we get to Boston. And I don't know. To me, it's going to be hard to not make some drastic changes in the offseason if that's what happens again. Are you there? Do I got you?
Yeah, my bad. Cut out a little bit there, but I heard
good.
the Tatum and Brown thing. Yeah,
that's all you heard? Oh, geez, I just went on a whole tangent. Damn it.
Gotcha. Sorry about that. But
No,
yeah, definitely crazy that I was ever talked about them breaking that up. Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be tough. That when they get down to the last stretch of the playoffs here, like all these teams are the real deal. All these teams are good. So Sixers got to kind of find a way to separate themselves and stand up to whatever's thrown at them. It's a defining stretch, no doubt.
It is. It is. All right, we're going to wrap up Trending the AM right here on DSM Media. Again, if you're watching this on replay, please like, subscribe, turn notifications on. If you drop your comments and thoughts and questions, I will respond to them on the replay. I always do. Make sure you follow my man, Sean Barnard, at Sean_Bernard1, Pick Swap Media, Philadelphia Sports Network. What do you got going on this week, Sean? What can we look forward to from you this week?
Yeah, I got a piece dropping on kind of a little bit of a schedule look ahead and why it's a defining stretch for the Sixers on Philly Sports Network. Today, there'll be a couple new things coming out on Pick Swap Media, some college basketball stuff, a little stuff all across the board there, so you can check that out as well. And then starting up a new kind of NBA and NCAA writing position for Sportskeeda. So dropped my first article there yesterday, getting back in the saddle today and continuing my onboarding process there. So there'll be some more kind of national content coming out there. So yeah, and like you said, follow me on Twitter at Sean_Bernard1 for that's where I rattle off most of my quick Sixers takes and everything else. So yeah, appreciate all you guys for tuning in and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you very much again. Everybody have a great day. Again, happy birthday, wifey. Happy birthday, Penelope. Everybody have a great day. It's going to hit 70 in the Delaware Valley today. I mean, only for like 2 hours, but it's going to hit 70. So everybody enjoy the weather. Everybody have a great day. We'll be back tomorrow, Trending the AM. Yo, let's get the win tonight down in South Philly, guys.